Welcome back, I guess. But like, I suppose I'll just do a quick introduction. I'm Ben, for those of you who don't know me. But if you've never met me before, you've probably seen me on the Melbourne CocoaHeads Slack if you're on there, or if you follow like the iOS dev lists on Twitter, I'm CocoaTouch. You've probably seen me tweeting about random stuff, most recently Eurovision and UI collection view. Two very different topics, but two things very dear to my heart. And my dog, yes. Pictures of my greyhound go through my Twitter feed at least daily. But tonight I want to break from tradition because usually I present the month that was at CocoaHeads, and I have done sparingly for the most part over the past 15 or longer months, I don't know, just like a few occurrences here and there. This is my first actual talk, and it's something that I love doing, and it's using animations to improve the apps I work on. And anybody who knows me and like talks to me longer than 10 minutes knows that I like doing animations and do UI kit and hate it passionately with like different things, but I also love core animation. And because that's tightly coupled to UI kit, I thought I could fit it in tonight. And does anybody know what this is on the screen? Except Vlas Voloshin.
Oh, come on. Well, he just said it.
Yeah, I know. It's an ease in, ease out curve. Thank you, Vlas. Like, no, it's good. But if anyone's ever written a UI view animation, which if you're all iOS devs, I know some of you aren't, right here, then you've probably used curve, ease in, out on a UI view declaration block before. And that's basically what it looks like behind the scenes, but you don't actually see it. Let's just start off with some basics. A Bezier, and I had to look up like how to pronounce that pronunciation guideline before, and it's apparently Bezier. It sounds very French, but they're widely used in computer graphics to model smooth curves according to Plato, who discovered Atlantis and wrote about it. You know, I don't know whether you know your historians, but awesome dude, you know, died a long time ago. No, no, I don't think he was. I haven't watched that season. But anyway, so unfortunately, or is it fortunately, I don't know, that we don't see the actual Bezier curves when we're writing animations in iOS. We just refer to them by name. And the common ones are linear, curve ease in, curve ease out, and curve ease in out. And linear is this one on the left. It just means the animation will move from point A to point B, B being the goal, at a steady rate over the course of the duration that you give it, i.e. 1 second. It will accelerate at a static speed and stop abruptly. That's why this one is so pretty, and everyone usually uses this one, at least I do, using curve ease in out, because I want it to start off slowly, speed up, and then slow down before it comes to a halt. So, if you want to write your own, it makes writing your own curve a right pain in the Bezier. Forgive the pun. I really tried with this pun. I was like trying to work a pun into that. It didn't really work, but I had to say it anyway. But this whole talk actually came because I work at iFlix, and the designer that we have there is like daily and every 5 minutes breathing down my neck saying, move it 1 pixel to the left. And I'm like, oh, all right, fine. So I do. And he's like, I don't like that curve. Can you make your own? I'm just like, I want to what now? And so I looked up what I had to do, and I realized that I was already doing that anyway using something called CG points. And I didn't realize that's what it actually was, but that's what it was doing. And I just quickly whacked in some control points, drew my own graph, and I thought, yep, this is great. Testing it, and it worked really well. And I actually satisfied the designer, which is something I'm still like kind of shell-shocked about. It's a bittersweet moment. I didn't know that I actually would get approval from somebody like a designer to go, yep, that's good, it's done.
That doesn't last for very long.
No, he's already asking for a new curve, but I'm pushing back. I decided to take the time and write a talk because I realized that not many people, after searching on Stack Overflow how to write your own Bezier curve animations on iOS, return almost 0 results. And I realized that, okay, just look in the APIs, control points done. I figured it out without much assistance, and I wrote my own answer on Stack Overflow to somebody who asked the question, which is good. I've been contributing more.
That'll pay dividends over the next 6 years.
Yeah, no, I wrote an answer about 6 years ago, and I still get the occasional upvote in my email inbox going like, you got new reputation. I'm like, how? I haven't logged in for like a year and a half. But because we don't see the graph, we have to, if we need to write our own curve, you have to find the one you want. obviously. You have to figure out what you want the animation to do from point A to point B. And usually the designer or you, if you're adept enough, will have to open up Sketch or open up Illustrator or even Photoshop if that's all you've got, and use the pen tool to figure out what you want, and use like anchor points and figure out the control points for your curve to transliterate into CG points to supply to the core animation engine. Now, prior to iOS 10, you had to use CA animation or CA basic animation, provide a timing function, which you would then create a timing function object and supply the control points X and Y value. There are two control points. You need to supply the X and Y value of both to that, and then the animation would work with that. But UIView itself didn't actually have the support for that. With iOS 10, using UIView property, I think it's UIView property animator or something, UIViewAnimator, you can use UI timing functions, which are really cool. So you just, again, dump the points in, and Bob's your uncle, you've got your animation block and click start animation. It's a little bit less verbose than core animation, but essentially the same thing, probably gets transliterated down to the same lines of code in the compiler. But once you've drawn your curve in Illustrator, Photoshop, whatever, you have to figure out what the relative control points are. So, and you want to normalize those values between 0 and 1, because what you see on screen is not what you get, is not what's actually going to work in code. So if you imagine, and this is, I'm pushing at a stretch here, I know, because you've all had beer and you're really excited for pizza, a 320 by 320 bounding box, and you draw a diagonal line in it from the bottom left to the top right corner, and the bottom control point of this curve is going to be, 268.8 X and 32 on the Y. So basically 84% of the X axis and 10% on the Y. And the top control point is going to be the inverse of that. And what would this roughly look like? And the answer to that is my first. Curve E's in and curve E's out. And I'm going to demo some. And the rest of my talk is pretty much going to be a demo if I can get QuickTime to work correctly. If it doesn't crash when it tries to, surprise, surprise. And now iTunes is popping up when I don't want it to. Let it be known I use Spotify. Fuck off, iTunes. Only it'll probably launch the session this time, so I can just kill that. So on the screen is actually an app that I wrote in a day and a half to demonstrate this. So I want to write my own custom curve. So we've got the presets here of, whoops, I've got to actually use my phone. I just realized that I was clicking on the screen thinking it was actually an app just now. So ease in looks roughly like this. The control point is at 42% on the x-axis on control point 1. So when I click the go button, and again I use the MacBook, if I press go, you'll see that it eases in before coming to a stop abruptly. Ease out is essentially the same thing, but in inverse, meaning it will start at a constant speed and slow down before it stops. And ease both. Now I couldn't actually find the control points behind the ease in, ease out curve on iOS. I tried tacking into UI keyboard and getting the values out of the dictionary, and it was all wonky and I couldn't be bothered translating it. So I came up with this, which is 42 and 58, and it starts off slowly and slows down pretty well. Now that is apparently the standard. But if the values that I put in before, and Vlas, I know you're going to say something, so do you have a question? If the values that I described before, 84%, 10%, so if I move this to roughly, that'll do 86, and if I move this, I'm drawing this graph live, and if I lower this to roughly 10, increase this to 10, you have yourself a rough approximation of the default iOS ease-in curve, which when I run, it will live demonstrate the curve for you. And the app that I wrote basically will give you the CG points that you need to plug into a CA media timing function or the UIView property animator, which gives you the custom curves you want. So if your designer, like the one at my work, says, I want to write a custom curve, and you need several beers just to get through that discussion, in my case about 12 anxiety pills, because I'm terrified to talk to him whenever I go to demonstrate some work I've done, because he's going to want changes. But he didn't this time, but he just asked me to do this. But this essentially is what a Bezier curve is. It's just points rendered on screen with custom control points that you can change between 0 and 1. And I've bound these values between 0 and 1, so you get like a decent animation. But you can play around a little bit and go into the negatives and really see some interesting results. But unfortunately, this app doesn't actually demonstrate that, because I actually wanted to show them on the screen because they can jump to the end and there's really nothing. But that's really my talk. Just that is what a Bezier curve is, and using CG points is how you can create them relatively easily. And the good thing is about using CG points is that you can take the values from that and just plug them into CSS and use them in CSS style sheets, cubic Bezier, even Android. If the phone doesn't explode, we'll work on it. If it's a Samsung phone, not Android, it's not Android's fault, it's Samsung. So
To say that with that, most things wrong with Android.
yeah, let's go with that. But that's really all I have. I thought this would go for longer, but I think I sped through it a little bit and didn't make much sense. But so does everyone have any questions? Ding!
Not a question, so I'll be last.
Can you show us the code?
The code for the app?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
It's not fit for public consumption yet.
Stuff like that.
He said he wrote it in a day. What do you expect?
Yeah, I wrote it in a day.
That's all I
It's not
expect.
nice.
Day code.
All right, if you're sure. No, basically it's just a CO shape layer that takes a CG path
You
with
see it on that.
on that. All right, Andy, I hate you a little bit right now. But this is pre-GitHub, like auditing,
Pre-PR.
pre-me at 11th. Fuck off, Ochin, seriously. So this is my view controller with all the outlets. It's beautiful. And I've written just some normalizing values here. Isn't that lovely? Casting to CG float and like multiplication with division in there to normalize it between 1 and 0 instead of using min-max. It's fantastic. And here's my terrible little box animation. So when I trigger it, you'll see that I use a cubic timing parameters function here and plug it into UIViewAnimator, where I get my control points from my graph view and I plug it in, just animate the frame as normal and just click start animation, and it uses my custom points. And here's my lovely refresh sliders function that just formats the CG point text in those two labels that you may or may not have seen. But here's where the magic happens. It's graph view. CA shape layers everywhere. It's ugly, terrible code, and this is where the path is drawn. Not that you really need to draw the path yourself to get a curve, and this project will be available on GitHub for you to like run in the simulator and just figure out what curve points you want if you want to use that and want to really annoy people that can't do them, or impress the designer at your workplace that says, I really want this to slow down more than the default animation slows down. Can you make it slow down just a little bit more, maybe by like half the speed?
Have you ever just tried saying, yeah, I did it, and then showing the same thing?
Yeah, I did, but I did. We tried that. Our designer's a Kiwi, you can't get anything over him.
Right.
And like, he's just like, no, you didn't do that. And I'm like, okay, sorry, you sound angry. So I'm just going to say, no, I didn't do it. I'm going to go back to my desk, cry about it, and then try and do it later.
Well, we haven't tried Richie McCall will be okay with this.
Not yet.
No.
No, but I got the PO to make a decision the other day, and he was not happy about it. But they sent me to tell him that the PO had made a decision. And I'm like, we're not doing this because the PO made a decision. He's just like, but I want you to do it anyway. I'm like, yeah, no, it's out of my control. I can't do it. So that...
It sounds like you've turned what is the usual kind of like tense environment going through iterations with this sort of stuff into a demo project.
Yeah.
Presentation.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like this is a good outlet for that.
Oh yeah, it was. It was the rage, the sheer frustration, the my hair is going grey, like at my desk, just prematurely getting a streak that I've had to dye over because I kept going over there, like, and he works at the other side of the room, so I would come up with my curve points and go, what about this one? Walk all the way over. Nah, not slow enough. So I'm like, go back to my desk.
Honestly though, don't you think working with a designer that is, like, does have that eye for detail is a lot more enjoyable than working with those designers that are really shit and, like,
Oh, don't get me wrong, like, don't get me wrong.
The first thing that he wants you to do.
I like those designers. I reckon it's a lot more enjoyable, and I have a lot more respect for those designers than the ones that just sort of don't show them that, yeah, that's fine.
No, like, don't get me wrong, a designer with like a great eye for detail, like I have a great eye for detail, I see things when they're malaligned by 1 pixel and I've got to fix that. Fix the auto layout constraint because it should be 10 instead of 6 or something like that. I will figure it out. And having him just go, it's not perfect, it pushes me to do my best, and that's what this came. I wanted to, like, okay, how can I make this better? How can I make this smoother? How can I make this the best thing that I can possibly deliver? And that was get you to go through every single point from 0 to 1, all on a decimal value, and go, which is the best one, 0.875 or 0.874? And 0.874 recurring was the answer. Yeah, so that was great.
Interesting tidbit, not really a question, but this is reminiscent of how the first calculator app on the Mac was created. The programmer, Steve Jobs, kept nagging this programmer like, it sucks. So he got so fed up, he built an app so Steve Jobs can design his own goddamn calculator.
And I've got a feeling that's the calculator that's in Mac OS now in 10.12. They've brought that back from like the 1990s.
I thought it was all about just how rounded the corners were on the buttons.
There was so many iterations.
So back then he wanted squircles. That's why he hired Johnny Ive from like somewhere in England. But yeah, as you can see, the rest of my code is just beautiful. It's just drawing lines to points, etc. It's not great, but it will be up on GitHub if you, for some reason, want to download it and bend your mind around. And Vlas, I'm deliberately leaving you to write last. And that's it. And I'm going to shut up now and let Vlas grill me on my points.
So I just think that the